Oh, what's going on? You ready to set some lineups? You ready to win and move to the Fantasy Football Championship round? That's what we're here to help you with. Welcome to Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. Adam Aizer with Heath Cummings. Jamey Eisenberg will be joining us shortly. It's a weird week, Heath. You know, these quarterbacks we were just talking about, would you say you have 5 that you like this week?
5 quarterbacks that I like this week.
And you know what? I'm going to go right into our trivia question because I'm going to pour some cold water on even 5. Which must-start quarterback has not scored more than 20.6 fantasy points in 6-point per passing touchdown leagues in 5 straight matchups against this week's opponent?
Lamar Jackson.
That is half of the answer. There's another one.
Josh Allen?
No.
Jalen Hurts?
No. I mean, maybe, but there's only one. I doubt it, but there's only one that I don't.
Who is it?
It's Joe Burrow. He always has this thing with Cleveland. They have his number. It is really weird. He hasn't played them yet this season.
Well, I do think
he has. I'm sorry, he has, and he scored. He didn't have a good game. Yeah,
I do think that would be like if you wanted to have concern about Joe Burrow or even Josh Allen in a similar situation. Like both of those games could be games where the other team's offense is so bad that they just don't need to do that much.
Yeah, it's just crazy. So for Burrow, his highest amount of points against Cleveland in the last 5 meetings is 20.6 in 6-point per passing touchdown leagues. For Jackson, he has never scored 20 fantasy points against the Steelers, and he's only faced them 5 times. He's missed a lot of Steelers games, but only one of them have been at home. So I'm hoping a little home cooking can help Lamar Jackson. Actually, I don't care because I don't have any Lamar Jackson. So
well, and like, what are you? How could anybody who has Lamar Jackson care? Like, who? Yeah. Well, they have Jaden Daniels, who was so fantastic against Philadelphia the first time that he played him.
So I got a text yesterday from a friend that said, "Hey, I think he used the word sacrilegious. Would it be sacrilegious to sit Lamar Jackson for Kyler Murray?" Given the matchups, Kyler.
I don't think it has anything to do with religion, but I do think that, like, what, you feel so much more confident in Kyler Murray, who's basically been good once in the last month.
That's what I said. I said he hasn't been good enough to justify. It's like, I see where you're coming from, but that's how people are feeling. They're nervous, but you know what? There just really aren't a lot of slam dunk quarterbacks. So you're in, as Jamey would say, the same canoe as a lot of other fantasy managers. So how about we talk about players we love? Who is a player you love this week, Heath?
So I told you I was going to do this, and I hope it works well. But one thing I noticed, and it's directly related to what the quarterback situation that you talked about, was there's only 7 teams this week with an implied total over 25. We're going to talk about the other end of this spectrum in just a moment. But the Green Bay Packers, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Buffalo Bills, the Detroit Lions, the Cincinnati Bengals, the Arizona Cardinals, the Baltimore Ravens, and the Atlanta Falcons are the only 7 teams this week with an implied total over 25. I love it if I have players on those teams in my lineups this week. And if I've got a tiebreaker, I'm going to lean towards players on those teams.
Can you say it one more time?
The Packers, the Buccaneers, the Bills, the Lions, the Bengals, the Cardinals, the Ravens, and the Falcons.
All right, let me throw just a couple names at you here. Marvin Harrison Jr., how do you feel about him?
I figured what would happen here is I'm going to give you the other list in just a moment. You're going to ask me about the best players on each of those teams. Listen, I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is someone I feel great about if he's in my flex spot. Because, man, that could be the hammer from the flex that wins me the matchup. And if my flex is bad, it's probably okay.
Okay, here's a good one. Marvin Harrison Jr. or Jerry Jeudy from our chat.
I am probably going. That's kind of the weird thing, because the Cleveland Browns do make the other list, but their implied total has not moved as much as you and I think Jamey would all agree the difference should be between a game started by Jameis Winston and a game started by Dorian Thompson-Robinson. It's only down to like 19.75. So Jeudy hasn't fallen as far in my projections as I would like, but I'm just going to force him down in the rankings. I think I'd probably start Marvin.
Okay. Hey, Jamey, what's going on?
Hey, guys.
Do you want to give us your start of the week?
Sure. Bucky Irving is the start of the week. Hoping that he's got no issues with his back. I wasn't thrilled that he's still on the injury report, but I'm sure it's just maintenance more than anything because not practicing most of the week last week and still played and had over 100 yards once again. So taking on a Dallas defense that's gotten better against the run lately, but I just trust Liam Cohen and the offensive system there for Tampa Bay. They've just been so fantastic at running the ball. Hopefully he doesn't lose a lot of work to Rachaad White. He's clearly going to share. But both guys have shown the ability to be successful. I just think Bucky Irving's got a chance to be a top 12 running back this week, just based on his opportunities. Hopefully he goes for the positive instead of the negative in the receiving yards, because last week he had 2 catches for -4 yards. But Bucky's typically giving you some good numbers all the way around. 115 yards rushing last week, 54-yard run. Didn't show any signs of being, hampered by the back. I think he's going to have an opportunity again for a potential top 10 finish.
All right, Bucky Irving, and then players to avoid. So Heath, why don't you give us the other end of that list?
9 teams this week, and this is terrible. Like, how are there 9 teams with an implied total below 20? You do not generally want to start players with an implied total below 20 points. New Orleans Saints, New England Patriots, Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, I will say this one's gone back and forth. The Raiders are not on the list, because it seems like every day that I look, a different team is favored in this game. Right now, the Raiders are favored, so Jacksonville is on the list, but the Raiders are not far. The Tennessee Titans, the New York Giants, the Cleveland Browns, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Houston Texans, and the Denver Broncos.
All right. Obviously, we're not going to sit Nico Collins. We're not going to sit Cortland Sutton. Malik.
I'm not going to sit Joe Mixon either.
That's an interesting one, though, because what a horrible matchup. But we'll talk about that in a little bit with one question for each game. So he is not saying avoid all these guys. He's saying, think about it. This is a low-scoring week. It looks like this could be a tiebreaker. Saints, Patriots, Jaguars, Titans, Giants, Browns, Steelers, Texans, Broncos. These teams are implied to score fewer than 20 points. Jamey, who are you avoiding?
I'd like to avoid Isiah Pacheco. I wish we would have been saying this for the last 3 weeks. He's just not getting the job done, not getting enough playing time. You thought, okay, after the second game where he had 16 total touches, now it's, opportunity to beat up the Browns, and he didn't beat up the Browns. So it's frustrating taking on a Texans run defense, number 4 in terms of fewest fantasy points allowed to the position. They did a great job in slowing down Devon Achane in the run game last week. Pacheco's not doing enough in the passing game, 4 catches in the 3 games since he's come back in week 13. So while I think a lot of people, myself included, were hoping for somewhat of a savior for your fantasy team going into the playoffs, he's been the absolute opposite. So tough matchup, bad quarterback right now in terms of injury, most likely at least. Could be a rough game for Pacheco once again.
I will give a little bit of good news because it does maybe look like it could be a low-scoring week. Doesn't, as of now, as of Thursday morning, doesn't seem like we're going to have that terrible weather anywhere. It doesn't seem like we're going to have one of those games in Chicago where it's 4 degrees and snowing all day and no one can operate the offense or anything like that. So that right now at least is a positive. It'll be cold, but nothing too crazy. All right. Hey, listen, if you wouldn't mind, if you got 30 seconds to spare, please vote for us. Go to sportspodcastgroup.com and go to Vote Now. Best fantasy betting and gaming podcast. Scroll down and find Fantasy Football Today. And then again, it takes about 30 seconds. And if you wouldn't mind voting for us, that would be awesome. We'd love to win this award again. It would mean a lot to us. And you can help get us there. So please, if you wouldn't mind, sportspodcastgroup.com. Vote now. Best fantasy betting and gaming podcast. Vote for FFT. Also, the holiday season is here. It is the perfect time to crown your fantasy football champion. Hopefully that's you. You can buy something to celebrate a championship or something to tease the league's biggest loser. Go to Fantasy Football Today's new fan shop powered by ShopSense. It has everything you need: trophies, t-shirts, any gear to make your league unforgettable. And that's not all. If you need a gift for the ultimate fan or you're looking to upgrade your fan cave, we've got you covered with everything from sports memorabilia to game day decor, perfect for the holiday season. Visit the shop now at shop.cbssports.com/fantasy. Get everything you need to make this season legendary. Use the link in the episode description or scan the QR code on your screen to shop now. It is shop.cbssports.com/fantasy. Very cool stuff that we're looking at right now. You're going to like it. Everybody got their holiday shopping done?
No.
Oh, man. It's tough. It's tough to pull it off this time of year. And I think I'm like a little bit too late to get to get like to order stuff online. I think I missed it. I gotta have to go to a store, get a gift card or something. I don't know. I'm not good at gifts. I'm very bad at gift giving. I'm one of the worst.
I'm seasonal.
What does that mean?
I'm pretty good at gift giving when it's not football season.
Yeah, well,
no, you're not.
Should be the case for me. I can see that. It should be the case, but yeah. All right, fine. At least I'm not alone during football season. News and notes. All right, so we know Dorian Thompson-Robinson starting, but that's not necessarily for the rest of the season. That is a week-to-week basis for the Browns. Mason Rudolph.
I asked Heath this question on Sports Network yesterday. Would you give any thought to you're deciding Jerry Jeudy versus, we had the question, Marvin Harrison, somebody in that same range. Any consideration to Thompson Robinson could stink and they bench him mid-game?
I mean, he probably is going to stink.
Yeah. I don't know.
Can we get somebody at the next press conference to just ask, how bad does Dorian Thompson-Robinson have to be for you to pull him out of the game?
Speaking of press conferences, do not tell Titans head coach Brian Callahan that his team is soft.
Yes, you should. That's how you get good clips.
Holy cow. He went on nearly 2-minute rant, which he wasn't screaming or anything, but he was using very profane language. And then at the end, what a line to finish it off. So if you haven't seen it, it's worth your time. But Mason Rudolph's going to start. Geno Smith, looking good. You guys ranking Geno Smith yet against Minnesota?
I wouldn't start him against Minnesota, no.
But you ranked him?
No. Well,
I mean, ranking, yeah, he's not making the top 24.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would start Michael Penix over him if that's the question.
No, but you are expecting him to start.
We are treating the receivers as if he is starting, yes. And I do think it's much better than Sam Howell. I mean, Sam Howell played basically the entire second half, right? Or most of the second half.
Yeah.
And could not get away from any pressure. Like the offense, it really is a credit to Geno Smith that he's been able to avoid pressure as much as he had, because that offensive line's been a disaster.
Oh, and it's a little disappointing for me because I used to love going, oh, for Sam Howell, but I guess I don't get to do that. Led the NFL in pass attempts last year, by the way. So Drew Lock is going to start for the Giants. Penix starting. Baker Mayfield missed practice. We think that's nothing. Tua Tagovailoa was limited with a hip issue. He should be fine. Aiden O'Connell and Patrick Mahomes practiced in full. Are you guys expecting Aiden O'Connell to face the Jaguars and Patrick Mahomes to face the Texans?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I knew Mahomes was going to play. He's so obviously was going to play.
Steve, as a Chiefs fan, do you want him to play?
Aiden O'Connell?
The game is Wednesday, and
he's fine. Yeah, like I thought he was going to play on Sunday night. He's fine. The nice thing is just win 2 games in 5 days, which isn't really that big a deal, and then he gets 24 days off.
So funny. All right. What else? I was going to read something about Kirk Cousins from CBSSports.com, but I just encourage you to go read it. Cody Benjamin wrote an article about what the Falcons can do in terms of the money they owe Kirk Cousins, and they could just cut him and read the story. Running back news. All right. Both Seahawks running backs missed practice. Zach Charbonnet has an oblique injury. Ken Walker did some walkthrough activities, but he missed practice. Is anybody picking up another Seahawks running back right now?
I did in our podcast league. I think if you're in a deeper format and you're stuck, it's not a bad idea to speculate on Kenny McIntosh just because he seems like he'll be the next man up. But again, you got to be talking desperate situation to trust the third string running back against the Vikings. That's a really good run defense. But when we're talking about Amir Abdullah, and we might be talking about Patrick Taylor again, and you're looking at some of these situations where we're on to third string and fourth string and fifth string running backs, it's he's in that conversation, so he'd be right around Kendre Miller if he starts. He'd be right around for me at least, like the Chiefs running backs and the Steelers running backs, and high end flex. Yeah.
And we're a long way from him, being the starter. It's not uncommon for guys to miss practice on Wednesday. So Charbonnet, he didn't leave the game with an injury, so we'll see. Isaac Guerendo missed practice with a hamstring injury that he apparently sustained last week. So I had a bunch of bids in dropping Patrick Taylor. I canceled all of those. We'll just see what happens there. We'll hold on to Taylor for now. Breece Hall was not on the injury report. That was good news. Roschon Johnson practiced.
But he didn't practice, though. That's weird.
That was weird. Okay, we'll keep an eye on what happens with Breece Hall. Roschon Johnson practiced in full. David Montgomery is not on IR yet, but I still dropped him thanks to some help from Jamey. I was like, should I drop? Do you think it's okay to drop Montgomery? He's like, yeah. So he might come back at some point, maybe in the playoffs, but you can drop Montgomery. So Lil McLaughlin out tonight. The Saints signed Clyde Edwards-Helaire to their practice squad. Sincere McCormick out for the season. Tony Pollard missed practice, no surprise. Tyrone Tracy Jr. was limited with an ankle injury. At wide receiver, Marquise Brown practiced in full. How about that? George Pickens missed practice, so he's not looking great right now. They're playing Saturday. Jalen Waddle missed practice. Cedric Tillman still in the concussion protocol, but might play this week at Cincinnati. Tight end news, David Njoku missed practice. Please get back out there. Zach Ertz missed practice. Will Dissly is out, but Jamey, Hayden Hurst is likely to be activated tonight for the Chargers. Does that change anything for Stone Smart?
It's not great, knowing that there's another guy there that they clearly have trusted in the past. It's just a matter of, how much will they go back to him or lean on Smart. But, any leagues where you were counting on him, I would probably be a little bit cautious. So clearly if Brenton Strange is there, make that move and pivot to, what should be a better situation. And then, I'm not starting Smart this week. I'm going to drop him outside the top 12.
All right. On defense, well, actually, let me go to the offensive line. Trent Williams, very unlikely to play, it seems, for the 49ers. Chicago left guard Tevin Jenkins missed practice with a calf injury, and Ryan Kelly, the center for the Colts, he expects to play this week. Be nice to get him back against Tennessee. Patrick Surtain will play tonight. Other big, TJ Watt was limited. Larry Ogunjobi was limited, but a couple of defensive backs, I believe, missed practice for the Steelers. I'll double check on that. Younghoe Koo is on IR. Don't start him. And Giants edge rusher Brian Burns has an ankle injury, so he's considered day-to-day right now as they are dropping like flies on the Giants defense. All right, we got to get to one question for each game. Before we do that, I'm going to give you my favorite stat of the week. It is making me a little nervous, guys. Mark Andrews. I think you have him as a top 7 tight end. He has never scored in 10 games against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And he scored a touchdown in 3 straight games currently. He has never scored a touchdown in 4 straight games in his career. Oh, my gosh. So, is anybody nervous about Mark Andrews with this history?
He's a tight end.
I did drop him when you in the rankings a little bit when you told me the stat, just because he's been so touchdown dependent. So he's still a number 1 tight end. Like, I would start Strange over him, but that's in PPR. That's the extent of it. I mean, look, at some point he's going to find the end zone against this team. It's just that there's too many times we'll face each other, and I wonder how many times because it's happened a few that Lamar did not play in some of the games where Andrews has faced him. So take that into account. But yeah, he's not outright benchable because of that.
What's more worrisome? Mark Andrews never scoring a touchdown against the Steelers, or Sam Laporta never scoring a touchdown outside?
What's the bigger sample size? Because we said Laporta was 6 games outdoors, right? Is correct?
10 games for Mark Andrews.
So it is a bigger sample size for Andrews. Probably the same sample size for Andrews with Lamar.
Lamar has only played the Steelers 5 times.
Less. There you go.
Yeah. Am I right about that? I'm pretty sure I'm right about that. 5 times, 4 of them.
Well, has Andrews played in all those though? That's also.
I think so.
Oh, Andrews has missed some games.
Actually, maybe not. But yeah. So Andrews 0 touchdowns in 10 games against the Steelers. In 26 games against his other 2 division rivals, he scored 18 touchdowns. Stuff. All right.
We're not doing the Steelers game today, or the Lions game today, right?
Correct.
Okay, so Dave's going to have some fantastic Jared Goff cold weather stats tomorrow.
I'm telling you, there's not a single quarterback. All right, except for Josh Allen. Just start him. All right, we'll be right back with one question for each game on Fantasy Football Today. All right, folks, here we go. One question for each game, starting with Pittsburgh at Baltimore. Start or sit Zay Flowers?
high-end number 3 receiver. He's been a little unlucky. Did score a touchdown last time these two teams met, but under 12 PPR points now for ever since the Broncos game, which I believe was week 6 or 7. It's been a pretty long time since we've seen him have a monster game. So if you look at what the Steelers have allowed the last couple of weeks, there's been a lot of big games to wide receivers, but that's Jamar Chase. That's the 2 Eagles guys. Flowers has just been overshadowed a little bit by Rashad Bateman scoring touchdowns, Mark Andrews scoring touchdowns. So I think you're clearly starting him in 3 receiver leagues. You've probably been doing so all along. I would start him over Jerry Jeudy, for example.
I would start him over Jerry Jeudy. I'm not sure if I've got that currently, but that's the way I'll end up. Yeah, he's like the very top of the I don't love my wide receiver, so I'm going to start this guy.
Zay Flowers has not had a single game with anywhere between 12 and 18.4 PPR fantasy points per game. He is either below 12 or 18.5 or more. That makes him a consistent tough call. Very strange. Houston at Kansas City. Who are some guys you would start over Joe Mixon, who has the toughest matchup in fantasy and has been horrible in tough matchups? Who are some guys you'd start over Joe Mixon?
Saquon, Jacobs, Gibbs, and Chase Brown.
Wow. You have him 5th? Woo, okay.
Jamey, I'm a little bit lower, but it's basically just all the must-start guys. Like, he's just one of those guys you just can't sit at this point. Unless you like, I love Bucky Irving this week. I'm not doing that.
Why?
I might move Bijan ahead of him.
You don't have Bijan Robinson ahead of Joe Mixon? Are you kidding? How? But he's Bijan.
He's Joe Mixon.
Yeah, but he's been he was terrible last week against the Dolphins. He was terrible against the Titans. He was good one time against another tough run defense. And by the way, he was terrible last week with 4 catches because he does get 4 to 6 targets every week now. Which
he had 5 catches.
And he was still terrible.
I think the concern
he's hurt.
The concern for me is not so much the matchup as daunting as it is. Is he healthy?
That's right. All right, Heath, come on. Any bet in the world, Bijan versus Mixon.
I just said I might move I didn't take a hard stance at all.
All right, fine. It is tough with the state of running back. It is tough to sit Joe Mixon.
I don't want to sit Joe Mixon. He's probably going to touch the ball 20 times.
All right, Rams are at the Jets. Rank the wide receivers. I'll start. Puka Nacua 1. Now rank the rest.
Adams 2, Cup 3, Wilson 4.
Yep, and full PPR.
Adams, Cup, Wilson. You said okay.
I'd go Wilson ahead of Cup.
We haven't heard it, but I'm sure there's a squeaky wheel game coming for Cooper Kupp.
San Francisco's at Miami. Tyreek Hill or Jauan Jennings?
I'm still Tyreek.
It's Jennings for me.
Okay. Cleveland at Cincinnati. Is it start 'em all, sit 'em all?
No, Jerome Ford's decent start.
Jerome Ford is a number 2 running back.
How do you feel about Njoku if he plays?
He'd be a low end tight end 1. He'd be right around where I have Andrews.
Yeah, he'd be behind Andrews for me, but he'd probably be in the top 12.
Tennessee's at Indianapolis. Are there any must-start players in this game?
Jonathan Taylor and Tony Pollard if he gets in any semblance of full practice. You're probably still starting him anyway, though.
Okay. So last week, I kind of view this matchup similar to last week's for Jonathan Taylor. And I know I don't know if Heath was, but I know you and I, Jamey, were apprehensive about Taylor and ended up being right, I guess, because of the fumble, but ended up being wrong because he should have had 18 points in that game. But still a good run defense and a guy who, if we're lucky, he's going to catch 1 pass, basically.
It's back-to-back weeks with over 20 carries. I don't think the Titans, despite the quarterback change, are running away from the Colts. I think you kind of know what you're getting. And what we've seen from the Titans the last 2 games is Chase Brown ran well against them. Brian Robinson ran well against them. So Jonathan Taylor, especially if Ryan Kelly plays, and I'm sure he's pissed and motivated, especially after what he said following the game. I'm not worried about Jonathan Taylor.
All right. New England at Buffalo. Who's a better flex? I'm going to give you 2 questions for each of these last 2 games. Rhamondre Stevenson or Khalil Shakir?
Shakir and PPR.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, he's so locked in right now. It's like 8 straight games of 7+ targets. It's back-to-back weeks with a touchdown. It's like 15 PPR points or more in 3 of his last 4. He's the guy. He's Josh Allen's guy.
Dalton Kincaid or Hunter Henry?
Kincaid for me. I think this is. We saw it a little bit last week. 7 targets in his first game back. He's got a pretty nice track record, which is saying something for him because he's been a disappointment. But he's got 5 games this season with 7 targets. 4 of those he's been 9.3 PPR points or more. So as we know, that's a borderline starter. Henry has been disappointing the last couple of games, and the Bills, despite what Sam Laporta did last week, have been fantastic against tight ends. So I think Henry's going to be in a little bit of trouble. I downgraded him a little bit this week.
I'll go with Henry. This would be a good place to implement the tiebreaker if you want to, for just like the number of points the teams are supposed to score. But neither one of these tight ends score touchdowns or really see targets in the end zone. Like those games where Kincaid's had 7 or more targets. He's had 53, 32, 51, 47 yards. He's just been bad.
He only played like half the snaps last week. But I did have a stat on Hunter Henry I wanted to give. I'm calling it the comforting stat of the game.
Well, he only played half the snaps because, they were just blowing out the team they played.
They were. Yeah. Hunter Henry's had 2 bad games since week 7. In those 2 games, Drake May threw 25 passes and 23 passes, including last week. 25 passes at Chicago in an easy win. 23 passes last week at Arizona, which was weird as they were losing, but I think they didn't have the ball much. But whenever he's had a normal game, Drake May, 30 or more pass attempts, Hunter Henry scored 9.4 or more PPR fantasy points. So that put me at ease a little bit with Hunter Henry. Not saying, I think he's close with Kincaid, but if you have Henry and, want to be encouraged, there's that. Jacksonville's at Las Vegas. Are we going right back to Jakobi Meyers?
Yes.
If Aiden O'Connell's playing, absolutely, 100% for sure.
Would you start Jakobi Meyers over Garrett Wilson if O'Connell's playing? You would.
Yeah.
Okay. And then let's spend a little bit of time on this because it's our last game and 2 of the most popular waiver wire players who, speaking about the Raiders guys, but who is your favorite running back in the Jacksonville-Las Vegas game?
Travis Etienne.
Alexander Madison.
Okay. And they are ranked where?
Etienne is like 23 and Madison is like 26.
I've got Madison at 24.
Okay. So borderline starts. All right. We'll talk more about that. I call that the movable object versus the stoppable force, with the movable object being Jacksonville's run defense and the stoppable force being the Raiders running backs.
It could be both teams, couldn't it? It's 2.
Yeah.
The only difference is, and I don't know if this has shown up in the stats or not, but I do think the Raiders defense, especially their front, has been playing a lot better.
Interesting. They don't have Crosby now, but if we're just talking about against the run, interesting. Yeah. It's just like, the Tennessee-Indianapolis game, the Jacksonville-Las Vegas game, there's some really good matchups there, but players we don't necessarily want to trust. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, you can do that, and you can get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM if you use the bonus code FANTASY. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using that bonus code FANTASY. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure that you use the bonus code FANTASY when you sign up. Saturday football. I love it. Houston's at Kansas City. My stat of the game is all about Joe Mixon. James Cook, Chuba Hubbard, and Jerome Ford are the only running backs with more than 13.2 PPR fantasy points against the Chiefs. That includes Bijan, Kamara, Derrick Henry, J.K. Dobbins, Jordan Mason. But you guys are not concerned, I guess.
No, I think again, you got, like, we just got this question. Joe Mixon or Chuba Hubbard. You could certainly make the case Chuba Hubbard for Joe Mixon. That's very valid given what the body of work has been for both of these guys and the matchup for both of these guys. I think the one thing about you get to this point is how cute do you get with your lineup when somebody, like he said, is going to get 20 touches? And you just listed, 3 running backs that, James Cook, for example, fell into the end zone twice against the Chiefs. Joe Mixon can get a pass interference on the one and he scores, and then he gets 5 catches, and you're still talking about a great day, for a guy that may run for 50 yards. So it's certainly tough. It's not ideal. I just think you got to have such a great situation.
You do.
This is one. Again, make the case for James Cook, who's going to probably share with 2 other guys, and they may be up 3 touchdowns, and James Cook has done nothing, and then it's Ray Davis time.
Also, we've talked about how this Chiefs defense hasn't been the same in their last 4 or 5 games. The Browns running backs averaged 7.8 yards per carry last week against them.
Yeah.
The Chargers were terrible, but they are terrible. The Raiders running backs averaged 4.7 yards per carry against the Chiefs. They've given up 5 touchdowns in their last 4 games to running backs.
Yeah. Now that is one thing because I have Mixon in 2 leagues, and obviously I'm starting him. I don't have a choice, but that is one thing that got me a little bit more hopeful, is that maybe the Chiefs' run defense is starting to show some cracks.
They got to be tired. I mean, who did they get Wednesday on Christmas Day?
Steelers.
Could be a great day for Najee and Jalen Warren. Could be.
Gosh, not who I want to be trusting in my favor.
Right, but still, it's tired defense, man.
All right, so let's keep it simple here. We have a lot of games to preview. Sit C.J. Stroud. Start Nico Collins. Start Joe Mixon. Sit Tank Dell, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
We haven't talked about Dalton Schultz, but he's usually decent. He was horrible last week. He was horrible 3 weeks ago. But he's got a lot of decent games. Would you start Dalton Schultz or Stone Smart?
It's funny you say that. I have that decision to make now in a dynasty league, and I'm going to pivot to Schultz because I'm nervous with Hayden Hurst playing.
Over under 1.5 games this season for Dalton Schultz with double-digit fantasy points.
Under.
Yeah, over.
He has 1.
Damn it.
It was week 13 against Jacksonville.
That's the only time he scored more than 10 fantasy points all season long.
All right, how much does your outlook of this game change if Carson Wentz is the quarterback compared to Mahomes?
I mean, we talked about this on Tuesday, that the Texans were the number 1 DST to get when Mahomes practiced in full. I dropped them from number 1 in my rankings to 10. So this is it's clearly a game changer. I'm still nervous because he is practicing full. He's not right. So this is, an Iron Man doing Iron Man things. But it's tough to think that he's going to be the same guy with this pass rush on him. They're second in the NFL in sacks. So the Texans are going to make things very uncomfortable for Mahomes, who's been very uncomfortable when healthy behind this offensive line. So Hopkins against Stingley a lot. I'm out. I think Worthy is the best receiver for the Chiefs right now because they're trying to manufacture targets. They're giving him, some carries. He's not a great start, but he's, desperation number 3 receiver. And Kelsey, you're starting really all season by default, more so than he's been great because he hasn't been great.
This game opened with an over-under, I believe, of 42 when I looked at it on Tuesday morning and I was doing projections, and the Chiefs were 2.5-point underdogs. So you're looking at the Chiefs scoring somewhere around 18, 19 points. It's gone up now. Chiefs are 3.5-point favorites. Worthy and Hopkins are completely off the board if Carson Wentz is starting. They are, for me, high-end flexes with Patrick Mahomes. Kelsey is in that tight end 12 conversation if Carson Wentz is starting. Kelsey's a top 6 tight end that you don't think about if Mahomes starts.
Yeah. Am I crazy for thinking that Wentz could be, perfectly fine? I don't think he's going to go out there and be horrible.
I think what you should be weighing is Wentz versus injured Mahomes.
Wentz could be fine, but the Chiefs pass catchers aren't must starts with Mahomes.
Yeah, of course. Well, except for
a small downgrade takes them out of the conversation for the most part.
All right. Speaking about, and Jamey already said, let's try to avoid Isiah Pacheco. Speaking about Kelsey, though, who do you guys have ranked ahead of Kelsey? And we are expecting Mahomes to play. He's practicing in full, so let's just go with that.
Again, like we could just listen to what and I know players and teams lie to us all the time, but he said on Tuesday, this is not as bad as the one that I had against Jacksonville in the playoffs. And the one he had against Jacksonville in the playoffs, he played 6 days later and threw for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like he says he's okay. He was out there doing stretching 2 days later, standing with all of his weight on one foot.
All right. So then you know what? Like I should probably ask some Mahomes questions here. Tua, Purdy, Stafford, Mahomes.
Stafford, Purdy, Mahomes, Tua.
Stafford, Mahomes, Tua, Purdy.
Bo Nix tonight.
We're going to talk the 49ers game, right?
Probably tomorrow.
Oh,
no, today.
Just to give you by comparison, Purdy is great after losses.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, my gosh. Like, great.
Oh, wow.
How many games has Purdy lost?
He lost 5 this year, and he's been great in all 5 after.
Okay.
Oh, well, looks like I'm starting him against Jamey in the podcast league. Fire it up. All right. So, Mahomes, where's he? Is he your top 12 for you guys?
No.
Okay. You have to start Bo Nix ahead of him or Herbert ahead of him?
I would start Mahomes over Herbert. I would start Nix over Mahomes.
Strongly prefer Mahomes over both.
All right, but we don't know for sure that he's going to play. But maybe you can just.
No, he's playing.
I guess
you got to assume he's playing.
Like if he has 3 straight full practice designations, I think it is. We had a guy that did that and then missed.
It is funny that we are considering, because you asked the question, Mahomes versus Herbert, and Herbert's ankles might be worse than Mahomes.
Right.
Okay, so I just realized that I deleted the Pittsburgh notes from the notes that I sent you today. So let me get that. That's going to be our next game. Pittsburgh-Baltimore. Both DSTs, by the way, for this game, Kansas City, Houston are in play. They're like 10-ish or something. I don't know where Heath has the Texans DST, but
14.
Okay, so they're both around like low-end starters. All right, let's go to Pittsburgh and Baltimore. And how much do you guys care about Lamar Jackson's bad history against the Steelers and Mark Andrews and all that? And the fact that, as Dave brought up last time we talked about Steelers-Ravens, they don't score a lot of points. No team has scored more than 20 points in 8 straight games in this rivalry.
I don't like it. It doesn't make me feel warm and fuzzy inside. What could you possibly do about it?
Yeah.
Look, you're starting Lamar Jackson. Just the thing you have to do when you look at him is just don't expect him to be Superman to win your week. Just expect him to be normal. So 25 points is still realistic. 35 points is probably not realistic.
I think it's the first time maybe since week 1 that he's not my QB1. So I have downgraded Lamar Jackson. He's QB2.
He's 2. Okay.
He's I would start Allen over him, and I would start Joe Burrow over him this week.
Okay. Jamey, you missed it, but Joe Burrow, 5 straight games with fewer than 21 points against the Browns.
It's a different Browns team. It's a different Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
You want to talk MVP. If their record was different, he'd be the
MVP. He should be the
MVP. Look how valuable he's been. They've almost won half their games.
Oh, it's totally his fault. It's his fault that they stink. Okay, so anywho, so Jackson and Henry are must starts. Is that it? Am I missing?
Must starts?
Yeah, that's it.
I know that he hasn't scored a touchdown against him in 10 games or whatever, but I think in this current tight end landscape, Mark Andrews is a must start.
I would start Strange over him. So I think anytime we have waiver wire guy versus somebody, if you could pick up a waiver wire guy, I would do it.
Yeah, I'd rather trust Andrews.
Question here from Iron Mike: Najee Harris or Javonte Williams? PPR.
Najee.
Yeah.
It's funny. Like we should be critical of Najee. Scored 13 PPR points against the Ravens last time these two teams met.
Well, if you look at Najee's catches, he has some weeks where he has a lot, or 3 or 4. Some weeks where he has 0.
He has 1 the last 2 games.
But I try to kind of figure it out, and it could just be fluky, but it sort of coincides with when he faces a team that gives up a lot of production in the receiving game to running backs, he catches passes. When he faces teams that are good against pass catching running backs, he doesn't. And guess what? The Ravens are really bad at that. They give up a lot of production, the 5th most receiving yards to running backs. And what did he have first time against them? 4 catches? 4 catches for 30 yards.
Both running backs had 4.
So I know people aren't going to start Jalen Warren, but Najee Harris or a Raiders running back?
I would start Madison over Najee. I would start Najee over Abdullah.
I agree.
Najee Harris or Jerry Jeudy?
Najee and non-PPR, Judy in full.
Love it. we'd also start Jerome Ford over Najee.
Yep.
Okay. What about
Mixon over Najee too?
Okay, yes. What about if George Pickens plays, would you start him?
He would be a low-end number 2 receiver, high-end number 3 receiver, just from the concern of how healthy is he.
Right. Yeah, because he hasn't practiced yet, and they're playing on Saturday. And Pat Freiermuth or Mark Andrews, Brenton Strange. How we feel about Freiermuth?
I would start Freiermuth over Andrews. His only bad game, really, since Russ has taken over, is the Steelers game. So take that for what it's worth. Is the Ravens game, excuse me. But he's got a touchdown in 3 straight games. Clearly 2 of those were without Pickens. And he's kind of been living in that 9.9, 10-point range or more in the last 5 weeks. So, you got a guy that's more involved. And I think really the best pass catcher for the Steelers that, not the running backs, So Russ is trying to be creative because the guys downfield aren't making plays. It's Calvin Austin, it's Pat Freiermuth, and it's, Jalen Warren for the last 2 weeks.
I've got him top 12. I'd go Andrews, Muth, Strange, but he's a start.
Where do you guys have Derrick Henry this week?
11.
10.
Bucky Irving or Derrick Henry?
I just made that switch last night to put Henry ahead of Bucky just because of the shared situation. But when I started the week, it was Bucky at 11, Henry at 12. I put Henry at 11 and Bucky at 12.
Henry.
How about Zay Flowers or Najee Harris?
Flowers and PPR.
I've got Flowers in. Flowers in full and half, but not in none.
Trying to think of some of the trending names at wide receiver in recent weeks. So guys like Adam Thielen, Jerry Jeudy. Who else? Who may we have picked up? Like Christian Watson or Romeo Dobbs or something?
Picked up?
McMillan. Would you start any of these guys over Zay Flowers this week?
No, but it's close with Thielen. It's close with McMillan. I don't remember all the names you said. I would start Flowers over Jeudy.
Packers receivers?
I would start him over the Packers receivers.
All right, so let me finish up with this. We've got guys like Justice Hill, Rashad Bateman, Calvin Austin, Jalen Warren. Do you like any sleepers in this game?
I think Jalen Warren is going to be, last week was the first time in like the last 6 weeks he's been under 9 PPR points, so he's been pretty consistent. Got you 10 in this game the last time these two teams met. This is one of those teams that, struggled. I think they're top 6 in receptions allowed to running backs for the season. So with no Pickens, with a pass rush that's going to be a problem for Russ, I think he's going to throw to his backs a lot. In the last 2 games, it's been more and more so than Najee. So again, you don't want to start him, but if you're down running backs, if you got concerns about match, I like him better than Pacheco. I like him better than the Chargers guys, the Broncos guys. So he's a high-end flex.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I've got it Warren, then Hill, then Austin. They are all basically within a half a point of 9 in the projections. So they're all kind of the same guy, but Warren would be my favorite.
Would you guys start the Bengals DST and or the Falcons DST over the Steelers and Ravens?
Yes.
Bengals for sure. I think I go Bengals, Ravens, Falcons, Steelers.
All righty.
It's interesting you like the Bengals defense more than the Falcons defense. And I don't disagree with you. I mean, it's just, how bad the Bengals defense has been. The Falcons have been actually pretty good the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, I think Dorian Thompson-Robinson is uniquely bad.
Yeah.
All right, Rams are at the Jets. Okay, who do you like better, Matthew Stafford or Aaron Rodgers?
Stafford.
Rodgers for me.
Do you guys really like them or what? Like, how are we feeling about your favorite quarterback in this Rams Jets game, Heath?
I think I am on maybe Rodgers Island. I haven't seen where Dave has him ranked. I know Jamey's not as excited, but I've got Stafford just kind of as a borderline QB1. Rodgers is a top 10 guy. He's averaged 20.5 fantasy points per game since Davante Adams joined the team, 289 yards in each of his last 2 games. Didn't do that once in the first 13 weeks. Head coach says that he's finally healthy and you're seeing the real Aaron Rodgers. I think he's going to finish the season strong.
What is the comparison prior to last week from what you said about Rodgers to what Stafford has done since Puka and Cooper Kupp have come back?
Prior to last week, Stafford was much better. I think Stafford's probably been just slightly better than Rodgers. He has since he had both of those guys than Rodgers has been.
Yeah, I like feels like the same type of
significantly better. I can give you the 17 game paces for since the 2 receivers returned.
So it's week 8. It's basically week 8 for both, right?
Yeah, I don't know, but it's 4,400 yards, 34 touchdowns, 6 interceptions for Stafford. That's a hell of a pace.
That includes last week, right?
That includes last week. It was even better before last week. For Rodgers, it's 3,970 yards, so that's like 400 less. 30 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Okay, the touchdowns and interceptions are fairly similar. The yards, much in favor of Stafford.
I think for both of these guys, like the defenses sway this for me. You know, I'd rather take on the Jets defense than the Rams defense. I know that they were awful, god awful against Josh Allen. Most defenses are god awful against Josh Allen. You know, how much of the game that the defensive performance against Brock Purdy was the rain and Purdy not being good in those elements. Rodgers was amazing last week in a half against Jacksonville. So I think Rodgers is a good start. I think Stafford's a little bit of a better start. I would take Stafford.
All right.
Are the Rams the only West Coast team 1 o'clock game on the East Coast?
Well, that depends. Did they stay in the East Coast city of Madison, Wisconsin?
Because they coming off that San Francisco game and playing an early game at the Jets. That's a thing.
Long week.
It is a long week, but it's physical game.
This is one of these storylines that I used to bring up a lot, and I just never bring up anymore.
Well, travel's a lot different now, and I don't think historically the Thursday to following Sunday turnaround is as bad. It's usually the Monday to Sunday that you don't love. Monday night, then East Coast.
It's also going to be cold. It's going to be very cold. I think this might be the coldest game of the week. Jets, it's going to be frigid this weekend.
And indoor team in a cold game.
I hate this state. Kyren Williams. Any hesitation with Kyren Williams?
Have you seen the Jets tackle?
So the Jets have gotten pretty good against running backs, actually, the last few weeks. James Conner, 2.8 yards per carry. Jonathan Taylor, 2.4. Ken Walker, 3.1. Devon Achane, 1.7. Tank Bigsby, 3.8. Travis Etienne, though, 4.6. So I just bringing that up here. Like, Kyren Williams or Derrick Henry? They're kind of similar, right?
Kyren.
They are kind of similar. I have Kyren 2 spots behind Henry.
All right. He's going to be a start. Read a question from the chat. Stafford or Jared Goff?
Stafford for me.
I've got Goff right now.
All right. Goff or Rodgers for you, Heath?
I'm going to make the move to Rodgers this morning.
Okay. Looking forward to breaking that one down tomorrow. Cooper Kupp. So Puka's a must start. Cooper Kupp is a number 2 receiver. And how confident are you guys in Adams, Kupp, and Wilson?
Fairly confident. I mean, Adams is coming off just a ridiculously amazing game. He's not going to do that again because he's not playing Jacksonville. But he's still a must-start receiver. And I wonder if, you had the sideline rant from Garrett Wilson that I think we've all seen by now where he's arguing or pleading for the fade route from Sean Jefferson, their wide receiver coach, that you wonder if there may be a few more throws in his direction this week as opposed to Davante Adams, a little squeaky wheel coming. But they're both, I think, just easy starts at this point. Just you can nitpick this guy versus that guy clearly, but I think in a blanket statement, they're number 2 receiver. Or Adams is a number 1 receiver, and Wilson's number 2.
And I kind of sold Adam short earlier this year and maybe celebrated the bust call a little bit too soon on Devontae Adams. But like, he's got 11 or more targets in 5 of his last 6 games. And he scored at least 17 fantasy points in 4 of those games. It was a 1-week explosion and one of the greatest halves of football any wide receivers ever had. But he's been incredible basically since Halloween.
Yeah, I'm going to ask the chat if they have any Cooper Kupp questions, because he's obviously been kind of up and down lately. We're going to sit the tight ends in this game. And then we spent a lot of time on Breece Hall yesterday, so I don't want to do that again necessarily, but you guys have him as a number 2 or borderline flex, basically.
If he's legitimately not on the injury report again today, and he wasn't on the injury report yesterday, if he's just practicing in full and not even listed, then I will be moving him up significantly before tonight's game. He's a high-end number 2 running back. If they're saying he's 100% fine, I'm just going to believe him.
I have a very difficult call in one matchup where my 4 running backs are Charbonnet, Irving, Breece Hall, Jonathan Taylor. Not a bad problem to have, but a lot of questions clearly. Irving is locked in for sure, and Charbonnet is locked in for sure if he's healthy and Walker's out. But if Charbonnet's out, then I got a tough call between Taylor and Breece Hall.
So I'm facing Dave in our YOLO league, and I've got a very difficult call with Breece Hall and Keenan Allen and Devontae Smith.
Oh, wow. That is tough. PPR, I assume.
You know what's interesting is, had I beat you, he'd be playing the easiest matchup. Not that there's an easy one left, but the easiest matchup on the table. And now he's got a dogfight with you, down Montgomery and down most likely Alvin Kamara.
For the record, I would start Jonathan Taylor over Breece Hall, Jamey.
I would as well, but to Heath's point, if he practices in full, it makes it a tougher call just because he's now going to look much better. But I think Jonathan Taylor is in a little bit better spot just because I don't think both guys are catching passes right now.
Especially if we get like Breece Hall's fine and Braylon Allen's out.
Isaiah Davis is also banged up too. That's part of it.
Yeah, and for the record, Heath, Breece Hall versus Keenan Allen, Devontae Smith, I have absolutely no idea what I would do. So good luck. All right, here's some Kupp questions. Kupp or Brian Thomas Jr. in PPR?
Thomas.
Oh yeah.
Kupp or Khalil Shakir?
Kupp.
Yep.
Kupp or Bucky Irving?
I would go Bucky in all formats.
I think I would too.
Kupp, Kendre Miller, Tajay Spears.
Kupp.
The only way that this is a comparison is if Tony Pollard is out.
Yeah.
And then I would go Spears over Kupp.
All right. Let's move on to our next game. But first, let's move on to a commercial break. We'll be right back on Fantasy Football Today with San Francisco at Miami.
The clock never stops. Relive the greatest moments with uninterrupted highlights and more.
It's Gareth Bale! Ronaldo! Wonderful goal!
On the UEFA Champions League channel. Streaming free.
So, a little hat tip here to Dave, who sent me a link. Dave sends these links on True Media, which is one of our statistical databases. Really good research.
Yeah.
I never really know how to read them. I'm just not smart enough. I'm going to need him to kind of break it down for me. But the gist of the link was quarterbacks who are in the Kyle Shanahan system have not fared well when they face Kyle Shanahan. So it's something to keep in mind for Tua this week against San Francisco. Anyway, we did spend a lot of time on Purdy and Tua. Jamey, you like Purdy better. Heath, I forget. Who do you like better?
I started out with Tua pretty significantly ahead of Purdy, and every time I go check the line, this game gets closer. It's now a 1-point game. In terms, the Dolphins are favored by 1. This is another team going across the country, the 49ers, but it's a 4:30 game. So, and the Thursday, so maybe it doesn't matter. I think I'm going to be making the change to Purdy this afternoon.
Oh, I hate this game. It's game of the week, as you remember, but it stresses me out so much. Every single decision except for Achane. He's the only one. Oh, sorry. And the tight ends. I stress out over every single one.
How Like, I don't understand the game of the week thing at all. Like, it's a game with two teams that are not going to the playoffs.
It's just gonna
and two teams that don't have top 12 quarterbacks.
It's gonna be a good game. It's just gonna be a good game. That's a great game. But I'm starting to rethink that.
It's got the potential to go either direction because you have two offenses that are coming off disappointing performances. You have a defense in San Francisco that's I think showed last week that they have the potential to be back to where they potentially have been, for the last couple of years. And you have a Dolphins defense that's played well, surprisingly, for the majority of the season. So I don't know really what to expect unless Tua shows up and has a big game. Because if Tua doesn't have a big game, then the 49ers have a chance to, I think, blow them out.
So the other thing is, like, Tua's always I think he's always really bad against good teams, but I can't sit here and call a 6-8 team a good team. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Anywho, who do you start in this game with conviction? HM, we start with conviction. The tight ends, even though San Francisco is so good against tight ends, but we have to start Jonnu and Kittle. Mm-hmm. Is there anyone else you're like, oh yeah, no doubt about it, I'm starting him?
Tyreek Hill is like Joe Mixon to me. Like, you got to have just a loaded roster to bench him.
I'm starting Jauan Jennings.
Okay. Yeah, you don't feel that way about Jauan Jennings, Jamey?
They're relatively close, but I mean, Jennings is somebody that was picked up off waivers for a lot of people once the injuries happened. So you may have a loaded roster. Like I said, I like Tyreek slightly better than Jennings, so I don't view them the same exactly.
Do you like Garendo if he plays? Do you like him better than Breece Hall? Do you like him better than Jonathan Taylor?
At this point, it's hard to say that he's safe, because he's been dealing with knee injury and now hamstring injury. And clearly they don't run the ball the same without Trent Williams.
Yeah, he's right in, like, definitely behind Taylor for me. Yes. Right in that range where he was ahead of Breece Hall at the beginning of the week. And if Breece Hall's got a good practice report today, then Breece Hall is going to be ahead of him by the end of the day.
All right. A running back had 73 or more rushing yards in each of Miami's first 5 games. That has not happened since 9 straight games. 73. No running back has reached that mark. They're allowing about 3.9 yards per carry to running backs in their last 8 games. They're just a really good run defense. It doesn't always matter for San Francisco, but it might. Jennings is a number 2 wide receiver. Dave is lower on Jennings. I would like to get his opinion on that, but he's not here. And then we like the tight ends, as mentioned. So how about the quarterbacks in this game or Jared Goff?
Purdy, Goff, Tua.
Goff over both.
The quarterbacks in this game or Kyler Murray?
Kyler over both.
Kyler.
The quarterbacks in this game or Sam Darnold? No, Darnold easy, right? Yep. How about no, I know. I mean, it's easy. Jordan Love.
Purdy, Love, Tua.
Love over both.
You want the Purdy stats after a loss?
Yeah.
So in 4 or 5 games after a loss this season, he scored at least 26.1 fantasy points. The worst game was a 16-point game. Now that's you have to somewhat Aizer stat that because he did not play after 1 loss. So he missed the Packers game because of the injury. And then you can't credit him for the Packers loss because he did not lose that game.
Oh.
So the Bills game is not necessarily him coming off of a loss.
I like that. I love that. I would Aizer stat out the Bills game anyway. It doesn't count. It was
it's not his loss. Like, that's Brandon Allen's loss.
I agree.
Now you could say that the Bills. I think this is where Heath is going. You could say that I think it was the Cardinals, the Seahawks loss. You could say that the Seahawks loss, and then his next game was technically the Bills game. So he is coming off of a loss there. But again, we'll say it's directly after a loss.
Love that. Directly after his loss.
But the like, you go back week 3. Remember, he didn't have 2 of his guys in week 3 against the Rams. They had just lost to the Vikings. He had a 30-point game.
Oh, wow.
So he's been, I don't remember all of them, but the Cardinals lost, he bounced back after that one. Like he's just his numbers after loss have been pretty good.
Okay. That was really to help Aizer beat you in the podcast league with Aizer stats. Nothing could be finer. Thank you very much.
But you were starting him anyway.
I was, yeah, it was him over Bo Nix. I'm going to start him. So let's go with, I'm going to give you some Jauan, Jennings, Tyreek Hill questions. Would you start a playing Tony Pollard or Jauan, Jennings, Tyreek Hill? And let's say it's half PPR. Make it a little harder for you.
Healthy Tony Pollard?
Yeah, he's playing. He's not going to be healthy, but he's playing.
The receivers.
I'm starting Pollard.
Joe Mixon or Tyreek Hill / Jauan Jennings?
Mixon.
How about T. Higgins?
Higgins over everybody you've just said.
Yeah, how about T. Higgins, Adam?
Yeah, okay.
We probably should talk about Patrick Taylor if Garendo's out.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Where would you rank him if Garendo's out?
Probably a high-end flex.
30.
Compare him to the other waiver wire guys.
Behind Jerome Ford, ahead of Kendre Miller, behind Alexander Madison.
If Kamara was ruled out by the time Taylor played, I would start Kendre Miller over him too.
All right. That's it for this game. Finished with this game. Moving on to Niners DST, by the way, is like top 12. Cleveland at Cincinnati. Stat of the game. The Bengals have allowed 42 yards or a touchdown to 12 tight ends in their last 9 games, including Isaiah Likely, Charlie Kohler, Jordan Akins, Grant Calcaterra, Pat Freiermuth, Chigo Okonkwo, and Josh Wiley. This is a great matchup. David Njoku, how did he do? Obviously, he didn't practice on Wednesday, but if he plays, how did he do in 3 games with Dorian Thompson-Robinson last year? David Njoku had 6 to 7 catches, 46 to 59 yards, 10.6 to 12.6 PPR fantasy points in all 3 games. He did not catch a touchdown. So if Njoku plays, would you start him or Mark Andrews?
Njoku.
Andrews.
Would you start Njoku or Strange?
Strange in PPR, Njoku and none.
Strange.
Okay.
And I think it's worth noting that we don't have to totally go back to last year either. Dorian Thompson-Robinson threw 24 passes against the Bengals this season.
Yeah.
On those 24 passes, the Browns gained 82 yards. He had 2 of them were intercepted.
So bad. I can't believe they made this decision. So then convince me that I should start Jerome Ford on this terrible team.
The Bengals have allowed 7 running backs in the last 5 games to get 10.4 PPR points or more.
Is that what you're expecting? You're expecting 12-ish points?
Yeah.
All right. What did I say? 90 yards or a rushing touchdown to a running back in every game?
Yeah.
That's insane. You know what concern I have? I think I briefly brought it up. It's like they almost never let Jerome Ford have a lot of work. They'll get a Deontay Foreman or somebody will be in there. They don't really give him that big workload. I wonder what's going to happen this week.
Well, the thing I like about Jerome Ford is he's got the ability to make the big play.
Yep.
So if he only has 14 touches, then hopefully one of them goes for 30 yards.
3 career carries of 60 or more yards for Jerome Ford. That is.
Can you go to Ryan's comment about Jerome Ford, the starting running back for the first 5 games of the season? It's a great point, and it's something that's been frustrating me the entire week about Jerome Ford. But in 2 of the 5 games, now he didn't get the entire workload for the Browns, as you've talked about, Adam, quite a bit. That they've mixed in somebody else early in the season. But 2 of the first 5 games when he was healthy, he got hurt in week 6. He had 15 plus PPR points. So we're obviously not talking about a safe option here. There's not. Yeah, Jerome Ford's guaranteed to do this. Jerome Ford's guaranteed to get you even those 10 PPR points. It would be a lot more comforting if it was Jameis Winston, because the quarterback situation feels bad. the production from him has been, sort of sketchy. But as Heath just alluded to, he's got big play potential. He's shown that. Adam, you did one of the questions on who's got more, right? It was Jerome Ford versus the rest of the AFC North, right?
No, it was Jerome Ford. Who has more 60-plus yard runs in his career, Jerome Ford or the 4 starting running backs in the NFC North?
Oh, NFC North.
And it was the NFC North guys, but it was just impressive that he's got 3 carries of 60 or more yards. And Jamey, he averaged 12 PPR fantasy points per game the first 5 games of the season.
Right. There were 2 big games and 3 stinkers, so there's risk. But again, you look at it, this is a bad defense that they're facing since Logan Wilson's gone down. So there's optimism here. There's no certainty here. So, to Ryan's question, I think is valid, but there's enough of a sample size. And you go back last year, there's enough of a sample size where Jerome Ford did some nice things when Chubb hurt his knee in week 2. So there's a lot to like about Jerome Ford's situation. It's just not guaranteed.
All right. Jerry Jeudy is a top 30 wide receiver. He's like 24th-ish for you guys.
He's moving down.
No, he's barely inside the top 30 for me.
Okay. So, yeah, I think you have him at 27th and
29.
And I now have him at 35.
Okay. This stinks. What a bummer. Start all the Bengals except for Mike Gesicki. Moving on to, you guys like the Bengals DST. Tennessee is at Indianapolis. Stat of the game. This was actually surprising to me. I mean, I knew that the Colts defense had been playing better, but in their last 9 games since week 6, the Colts have allowed the 6th fewest passing yards in the NFL and the 3rd lowest yards per attempt. And this great run for the Colts started with a Titans game. But it's just something to consider if you're thinking about Mason Rudolph, who's been good, or you're thinking about Calvin Ridley, maybe. This Colts defense actually has been quite good. And in their last 5 games, no wide receiver has more than 13.2 PPR fantasy points. That's Jets, Bills, Lions, Patriots, Broncos. None of them even reached 14 points. All right. So anyway, Calvin Ridley or Jerry Jeudy?
Jeudy.
Are they close?
Yes.
They're both number 3 wide receivers.
Okay. Mason Rudolph, did he crack your top 24?
Yes.
He is currently number 24.
Someone asking in the chat, Drake May or Mason Rudolph?
Rudolph.
I mean, how can you not start
Yeah,
Mason
I know.
Rudolph like 3 days before Christmas?
That's what I'm saying. Rudolph or Geno Smith?
Rudolph.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm going to save the day.
Talk about I guess you guys like Jonathan Taylor. Who would be your favorite running back in this game?
Pollard, if he's been healthy this entire stretch, it would be Pollard, but I'm just nervous that he's fighting through this ankle injury. So Taylor.
I've got Taylor 14, Pollard 15. So,
All right. Hypothetical. Pollard's out. Who's your favorite running back?
Spears.
yeah, Spears would be higher than Pollard.
Oh, gosh. Please, Spears. I have in every league pretty much. Just, thought I was going to get that last week. Didn't happen. Sorry. That's mean. That's mean. I shouldn't be saying that. Sorry, Tony Pollard.
You just want Tony Pollard to rest.
I do. Rest.
So that, and we get a couple of these. Because I think Kamara is kind of in a similar situation. They've been talking on the broadcast about how Alvin Kamara really wants to have his first 1,000-yard rushing season. And he's not far away from that at all. Tony Pollard is only 18 yards away from his third consecutive 1,000-yard rushing season.
Wow. So you can get that next week. Chigo Okonkwo is about 15th or 16th in the rankings. Starter sit Anthony Richardson. And you know what? The Tennessee Titans are actually pretty horrible against mobile quarterbacks.
They're very horrible. They're top 5 in rushing touchdowns allowed for the season with 5. I think they're 4th.
Fourth most. Yep.
It's not a bad matchup. It's just a matter of, how much trust do you have in Anthony Richardson. So I went to one league where I advanced, did waivers last night, and Richardson was my quarterback, and there's nobody else that is worth picking up of the, replacement option. So I'm sticking with Richardson. He's for me, he's in that same range of Stafford and Rodgers and Purdy and Tua. It's risky. It's absolutely risky, but it would not surprise me if he has another good game on the ground. He's been 40+ yards on the ground in 4 straight games. He's got 4 rushing touchdowns in his last 4 games. So that gives him the opportunity for a good outing. And man, was he on his way to a great game. First drive, he runs for a touchdown. It's like, here we go. I thought he was going to play well, and he pooped the bed once again. So
Richardson or Herbert from the chat?
Richardson.
I'd start Richardson over both quarterbacks tonight.
I guess you'd start him over Mason Rudolph then.
I would.
Okay, how about Josh Downs and Michael Pittman compared to Jerry Jeudy and Calvin Ridley?
They're behind, both of those guys. Downs had a great game against the Titans the first time around, but that was with Flacco. So he's got 7 targets in each of the last 2 games with Richardson. He's got under 7 PPR points or under 8 PPR points in each of the last 2 games with Richardson. So he's just become too risky at this point to say must start receiver, but there's a great matchup here based on what we've seen from this Titans defense the last few weeks. Like, they just give up so much production to wide receivers. Pittman to me is just too tough to trust because he's just not been good with Richardson over the course of their time together.
They're wide receiver 40 and wide receiver 41 for me. So I would rather not.
Start a DST in this game?
It's interesting that the Colts DST from our projections is really high. I don't know how much that's factoring in more Levis's numbers than Rudolph's numbers. I do think you should be rostering the Colts DST because they get the Giants next week. So, if you don't have a better option for this week, you take your chances against what has been a bad offense, and then hope that you make it through and then you get the Colts against the Giants. But you said it. This Colts defense has played really well lately. They just turned over, Bo Nix 3 times with 3 picks. It's kind of been a little underrated story for them that their defense has kind of kept them in a lot of games for the majority of the season.
New England's at Buffalo. I already gave you the comforting stat of the game about Hunter Henry. When Drake May throws more than 30 passes, Hunter Henry has a solid game. Jamey likes Kincaid better than Henry. Heath likes Henry better than Kincaid. And I'm not sure if I asked this as a follow-up, but would you start either of them over Mark Andrews?
Kincaid and PPR.
No.
All right, so we've got, for the Bills, Josh Allen, James Cook, easy starts. Khalil Shakir is wide receiver what for you?
He's a number 3.
He is ranked as a number 3 receiver, but this is one of those must-start guys. Like, he's just been so good.
You get a lot of targets. Well, I mean, not a lot, but 7, 8 targets.
He's got 8 straight games with 7 or more targets.
Yeah, and he catches so many targets, so it's a lot of catches. It's a high floor. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I just think this is a game that the Bills can just do whatever they want, and they do have all of the pass catchers healthy. We've seen a lot of Josh Allen games this year where he throws fewer than 30 passes. That he could do that and still score a lot of fantasy points. But I do think there's a little bit of risk of a bad game from Shakir here.
It certainly could be. You also wonder though, is this the pad the stats game for the MVP?
Shakir has scored double-digit PPR fantasy points in every game he's played a normal snap share. He's had a couple of games. I think he left one game with an injury. I think there's been a blowout. But normal snap share, which isn't even that many, it's 70-ish%. Double-digit PPR fantasy points every game this year. That's amazing.
Right. There's just been a lot of those that were 11.
Yeah. That's not a great game.
Right. So
not lately though.
It's not the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, 3 of the last 4. It's 15+ points.
All right. Is there how do you feel about Rhamondre this week?
Flex.
He's a flex. Look, it's a great matchup. I mean, they're number 2 in fantasy points allowed to the position, and he's getting a lot of work. But couldn't do it against the Cardinals last week. Antonio Gibson's getting about 7 touches per game. So that's a little bit of a factor right now. It's just that they're 14-point favorites or 14-point underdogs on the road. So
yeah.
This feels like a blowout by halftime, which is a game you'll hate.
It's terrible for Rhamondre. Okay. And I don't think I would start Madison over him. I would not start Abdullah over him.
Right.
I would in PPR.
Amir Abdullah, we're about to talk about him. He has 2 games this year with more than 16 receiving yards. 2 games this year with more than 3 catches. It's been recent.
In the last 5.
Yeah, I know, but still, I don't know. It's a lot of faith to put in Amir Abdullah. No, it's not a lot of faith. It's not like we're putting a lot of faith in him, but it's some faith to put in him. That's it for this game. And no Patriots wide receivers, and Drake May usually scores about 20 points. He runs a lot, but no, I don't think we want to start him. Buffalo DST. We're going back to the Bills DST?
Yep.
Okay. Jacksonville's at Las Vegas. The stoppable force versus movable object. 7 of the last 8 lead running backs against the Jaguars have averaged 4.9 yards per carry or better. Enter Alexander Madison. He averages 3.3 yards per carry. The Jaguars allow the second most receiving yards per game to running backs. Enter Amir Abdullah, 2 games this season with more than 3 targets, 2 games this season with more than 16 receiving yards.
But you got to stop that, though. It's a lot.
He's been this guy all year. He's been there. Well, that's not true, actually. I guess when Zamir White and Matt.
It's the last 5 games.
Okay, but they're all right.
Well, 2 of the last 5 games, he has more than 3 targets.
Yeah, but Madison missed some of those games, right?
Right.
So
2 of the last 5 is not even a good.
McCormick was there. It's not safe. I'm just saying, like, the sample size you have to use is when all these guys were beat up.
All right, but now Madison's back. All right. Okay.
I mean,
I think Madison is
You're
is the running downs guy, and Abdullah's the passing downs guy.
That's probably true, but I actually think there's a chance Madison outcatches him just with his first.
There absolutely is a chance.
Catches.
100%.
Yeah.
I think in hurry up situations, if they're trailing, then Abdullah's going to. Heath said it best on Wednesday's show. And like I said, I qualified it from Tuesday because at that point we thought Ritter might be starting. If Ritter was starting, I would like Abdullah better than Madison because Ritter stinks and is not going to throw the ball down the field at all. So now Madison is the better of the 2 running backs. And if you think that the Jaguars are going to be playing with the lead, then Abdullah probably is going to have the better game. If you think that the Raiders are going to be playing with the lead, then Madison's going to probably have a better game. In a back and forth game, it probably favors Madison. Look, he's got more touchdown potential, and he may have just as much receiving potential because that was his role earlier in the year. So there's no guarantee either way who's going to be the pass catching guy here because it's the Raiders. They're just not a very good team. But I think Abdullah's 5-game sample size of White being hurt, Madison being hurt, McCormick being hurt, no real certainty here. He's shown you a little bit of something that you could say, okay, maybe there's some hope here.
Would you guys start Madison or DeAndre Swift?
I kind of like Swift this week with the injuries for Detroit, so I would go Swift, but they're close.
Swift.
Madison or Tyrone Tracy?
Tracy, but again, they're close.
Madison or Devontae Smith?
Smith.
I'll go Smith and PPR, Madison, everything else.
All right, we're going to start Brian Thomas Jr. Brenton Strange is not someone that we've got an agreement on here. Jamey's higher on Brenton Strange.
He's top 12 for both of us, though.
Okay. 7th for Jamey, 6th for Dave, 11th for Heath. He had
Leo gets, by the way.
Okay. I've been doing that a lot today. Brenton Strange has, I think, 6 catches this year of 20 or more yards. Evan Ingram has 2. Evan Ingram actually is having such a bad season. Of all the tight ends, 34 tight ends, I think, had 40 or more targets. He's dead last, Evan Ingram, in yards per target. Just awful. So
I wonder if the Jaguars move on from him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, like, if you could live with the floor of what Ingram was giving you and maybe have a better player and an unbelievable matchup. Holy cow, the Raiders are horrible against tight ends. Now I'm excited actually to start Brenton Strange.
But you have him in almost all your playoffs, right?
Yeah, I do have him. I am starting him in like 3 leagues.
I think in the magazine league, you and I were the only ones who added anybody, and we both added like 3 players. You added somebody, and then I added Strange, and then you added Abdullah. I think it was interesting to watch that go back and forth.
McMillan, I think I added before Strange because
I have McMillan. You added before Strange.
I have Hunter Henry in that league, and I would start Henry over Strange. I mean, what I think is probably pretty close for you guys. But
the Chiefs are activating Marquise Brown to play Saturday.
By the way, stat of the game: Travis Etienne is averaging 1 broken tackle for every 56.5 carries. Worst in the NFL. Yikes.
He's not good, but here come the Raiders. So the thing about Etienne, got to buy into the playing time last week. So 76% of the snaps, whatever it was second most or most he's played all season.
Yeah.
And he's given you 11 PPR points or more in each of the last 2 weeks without a touchdown. So he's rallied a little bit based on how crappy his season has gone, to the point where he's in the discussion with some of these other running backs that we've talked about, Tyrone Tracy, and I like him better than the Chiefs guys, better than the Steelers guys. Like there's a chance here for Etienne.
Okay. And we love Brian Thomas Jr. and Jakobi Meyers. We're expecting Aiden O'Connell back. So that's a guy who has been really terrific against the Jaguars, who allow the 3rd most fantasy points to wide receivers. And we're
Can
back.
He scored a touchdown, by the way.
He was the guy, right? How long did it take him to score his first touchdown, Jakobi Meyers? He had
His career?
Yeah, remember?
Yeah.
He had like crazy streak, and then
Yeah.
I feel like he had one that was called back. He went a long time without a touchdown.
I think Trey McBride may have just broken his record for most targets in a season without a touchdown.
Really?
Hopefully McBride's going to break that record.
Wait, Deontay Johnson doesn't have that record?
One of the coolest things is that Trey McBride has 0 receiving touchdowns, but he's still scored more touchdowns this year than Hunter Henry.
That's crazy.
Because he has a fumble recovery and a rushing.
Yeah, so Deontay Johnson must have that record, right? 147 targets without a touchdown in 2022. All right, I think we're good with this game here.
Did I host this show?
What do you mean?
Time.
Oh, yeah, super long. Sorry about that. We are out of here, and good luck, everybody. Get hopefully some good fortune tonight to get us off on the right foot. Although I wouldn't mind Jamey having a horrible night tonight and coming into the podcast like he did last Friday. That was entertaining.
Oh, let's see. Against you or in general?
Just me. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't have a lot of Broncos, Chargers guys left.
Aizer has Sutton, so that could make things terrible for you.
In the podcast league?
Yeah.
And I don't see that Jamey has anybody starting tonight in that same league. I'm playing the only listener that advanced. Congratulations, Benjamin Cherry. And what's that?
Good for us. The three of us in the final 4 in the podcast league.
Yeah, really making it fun for the people who
Well,
listen to the
technically,
podcast.
we do have one list. We do have 2 listeners.
Yeah,
Is that
Todd
correct?
Rones.
Yeah, Todd. I'm sorry. I don't have anybody. Benjamin doesn't have anyone. So we're just relaxing tonight.
Yeah, all right. We'll watch the Knicks Timberwolves. Take care, everybody. We'll talk to you tomorrow on Fantasy Football Today.